To introduce myself, I am Daisy Duan. I'll be moderating this session. I'm a second-year graduate student studying molecular biophysics and biochemistry at Yale University, and this is my second year serving as a STEM Education Outreach Director, and this year as Director of Digital Education for GSMI. I am so excited to introduce everyone to our two speakers for today's presentation on how to write an effective personal statement for graduate school. So we have with us today two speakers. Our first one, Cathy, PhD candidate in molecular biophysics and biochemistry at Yale, so the same department that I'm in. And for those of you who are also in the GSMI community, you guys should be very familiar with her already, with her signatures at the end of almost every email that we send out. She's truly helped transform and grow Yale GSMI. And of course, Juan, the postdoc fellow at St. Jude's Children's Research Hospital. And he's also been with us for a long time. He actually wrote one of our blog pieces way back in the day on embracing our identities in the lab. And so I'll be posting his blog piece in the chat box below as well if you want to give it a read after the webinar. So here it is. Okay. Yeah, and so just as a heads up, Juan will also be giving a webinar on an overview of graduate school fellowships next week. So next week, exactly from today on September 16th. So stay tuned for that. So yeah, I am so incredibly lucky to be working with these two amazing CL team members, and even more excited for you all to meet them and learn from them today on how to construct a strong personal statement. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Cathy and Juan. So please take it away.
Thanks, Daisy. Hi, everyone. I'm Cathy. Yeah, we just wanted to first give you a little more background on ourselves as we address the personal statement, so you know what experiences we had applying to graduate school. So I'm currently a fifth year PhD student, and I majored in chemistry at Amherst College. I did have wet lab experience every year, and then I did take 2 gap years to work as a lab tech at MIT, and I applied to both biochemistry and chemistry programs all over the US. I did end up taking the GRE twice. I had several invitations for interview weekends and a few offers extended. And then Juan.
And hello, everyone. My name is Juan, and yeah, thanks, Daisy, for the introduction. And as Daisy mentioned, I'm a first-year postdoctoral fellow at St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. I applied to 9 different PhD programs, and I have successfully obtained predoctoral and postdoctoral funding. So I have a little bit of experience with the writing personal statements, and I'll try to relay my information here through this webinar.
Great, thanks. So for this first half of the webinar, I'll kind of go over the parts of the personal statement and how to best structure them. And then Juan will address specific examples for the different parts as well. So first, an overview of the personal statement. So a personal statement is really important for your graduate school application because it's your space to share your unique story of how you got interested in science. Share your research experience and career goals. So there's only one you, and this is your space to show the admissions committee who you are. And through showing those research experiences, you'll show how well prepared you are for graduate school. So keep in mind who's going to be reading your personal statement. So this is a group of faculty members of the program or department that you're applying to. Depending on how large the program is or how many applications they get, it could be between 5 to 10 professors, but they make sure to have a mix of young and tenured faculty. Young meaning the professors in their 1st to 5th year of being a professor, and tenured, they probably have been there for over 8 years, so they've seen various application cycles. Another reason why the personal statement is important is that it is a way for the admissions committee to see your science communication skills. You end up doing a lot of writing in a PhD program besides all your amazing science. So this is really just a taste for them to see, can you effectively communicate and address the prompt question so they can understand your research experiences and why you want to go to graduate school. So what are the components of a personal statement? So first, you begin with the background and motivation. This is a formal introduction as to who you are as a scientist and partly as a person. So this probably takes about 1 to 2 paragraphs in the beginning. Then the bulk of your statement is really going to be your research experiences. So what have you done? What have you learned that have informed your decision to apply to a PhD program? Then at the end, you want to end with program qualities. Why are you applying to this particular program? And then in that end of that paragraph, you want to tie it back to why you're pursuing a PhD and why you need a PhD for your career. So first, the background and motivation. So here you really want to start with addressing how did you get interested in science? And this might take some reflection time, really just take some time to try to remember, like, what was it about science that attracted you? And was there a question that you wanted to answer? Was there a class that you took? Was there a really exciting discovery that you were like, I want to know more about this? And then why are you interested in this specific research field? What is it about biochemistry or chemical engineering or clinical psychology that you're really excited about, and that is why you want to continue studying it and get a PhD? You also want to introduce any obstacles you've overcome to show that you are committed to pursuing a PhD in this career. So have you made any sacrifices in your pursuit for knowledge? Attending and graduating college with no financial or familial support is huge. So this is definitely something I talked about in my statement. And if so, feel free to like really share in a formal way of what obstacles you've overcome. Another way to show that you're committed to science is if you inspired others to pursue science. Did you spend a lot of time volunteering for an initiative or a program that helped others get into science? You can address this briefly, as you also have your resume to show those experiences. But you really want to use the background and motivation to set the reader up that you are dedicated to your field and you really want to pursue this PhD. Sorry. Oh, okay. So now you want to move on to the research experiences. So this is where you're going to have space to show how you are a capable scientist. So you want to also take some time to reflect what research experience have you had and how have they prepared you for graduate school. Each research experience, whether you have realized it yet or not, taught you both hard and soft skills. So hard are the technical skills. What research were you doing? What skills did you learn? How did you manage time? And then soft is more, who did you work with? Were you working on a team? Were you working independently? Did you have to build creativity to overcome any obstacles? And this is important because during a PhD, there's going to be a lot of factors that are out of your control that you have to adapt to. And if you can show that you have been able to adapt to unforeseen obstacles before, this will show the admissions committee, that you are a strong candidate. So you really want to show mental fortitude through your experience, not just say it. So how do you structure your research experiences? So you want to give each research experience at least 2 paragraphs because you really want to share the whole story of that research experience. And so quality is more important than quantity. And sometimes as scientists, it's really hard to parse down and choose just a few because you're probably really excited about all your explaining of experience fully. So first you want to introduce the project and the question that you were investigating. What's interesting about this problem? Why were you investigating it? So if you need to provide some short basic background, do so very concisely so the reader understands what problem you were addressing. Then you also want to make sure to address your part in the project. Were you working independently? Were you working one-on-one with someone? And what methods did you use? What techniques did you learn? And you want to make sure to use action words. It's really easy to fall into the habit of saying, and then we did this, and then we did that when you're talking about science, but you really want to try to bring those technical parts more to life, like and then we discovered this, and then we had this. So highlight any problems that occurred and any solutions that you came up with, because this is really going to show how you can overcome obstacles, especially if it's something that maybe the person you are working with hasn't experienced before and you were able to solve it. This is a great way to write this out and show the committee that you were creative in the situation. And you also want to explain what the results were, even if it wasn't what you were expecting or it was inconclusive. There's always something that you can learn, or 10-week summer experience to try to or even the conclusion could even be that this is why you wanted to continue doing more research, because you want to answer that question, or you want to really engage in the larger scientific community and what other questions are out there that don't get answered every year. Yeah. So at the end, you want to address the program qualities. So why are you applying to this particular program or institution? Are there specific resources, specific people you want to work with that are at this institution? If you did meet a PI at a conference you went to, or there was a seminar at your school, and that's why you're applying to the program, it's perfectly great to mention this. Schools spend a lot of time and money sending PIs and graduate students to conferences to try to recruit people to apply to their program. So if they hear that, oh, you met this professor at Abercrombie or SACNAS, and that's why you were inspired to apply to their program, that's a great thing to say, and a very honest thing to say as well. Then additionally to the program qualities, you want to mention at least about 2 to 3 specific faculty members whose research you're interested in working for. So this also shows that you've done a little bit of homework as to why you want to apply to this program, and not just that they were on a list that you saw. So take some time to browse lab websites. Sometimes there's a lot of faculty in one program or department. So really break it up into chunks, because it can feel overwhelming. And then just look at a few each day. This is just an example sentence of how you could phrase why you would be interested in someone's lab. So Dr. Simon's lab is at the interface of chemical biology and investigating RNA biology, and I wish to contribute to the creativity and method development of these techniques. Maybe you don't do RNA biology yet, but maybe you're a chemical biologist, and that's why you're writing that you're interested in this lab, and that's perfectly great. It doesn't mean that you're committing to joining this lab. It just means that this is what sit in multiple labs, because you want to make sure that there might be more than one possible home for you at that department. There is some fields different size, they're smaller or larger. So some fields you do apply directly to the lab. So you want to make sure that you know what the status quo is from your mentor as well. So at the end of that program qualities paragraph, you want to state your clear objective. So what will you do with PhD in STEM? An independent and creative scientist, more so than the foundation that you've started. But it's important to know why you want to take on this challenging journey. It's easy to say that you love science, but why are you committed, and how have your research experience built to you wanting to apply to a PhD program? And you want to keep in mind that when a program accepts you, they're really investing in training you. So they want to build you up as a scientist. So this is just to help them understand that you will be committed to the journey. And you're not bound to what you say 5 years from now. You could come in wanting to be a professor at a primarily undergraduate institution, and 2 to 3 years into your PhD, you learn about other career options that are more interesting to you, and that's okay. You know, everyone has it right now. Then a few writing tips. So professional honesty. Again, there's only you have gone through your experiences, and you want to help the reader understand who you are as a scientist. So try to avoid cliches like, I'm going to save the world. You probably are. And science is amazing. Yes, science is really easy to fall in love with. And if you need to start writing this way, that's okay. You know, if you just need to get something on paper, but eventually you should morph it into it being something more reflective of who you are, more unique. And know what your writing style is. Some people like to speak out loud and record their ideas and then listen back to it, or set break times, set snack break times, you know, whatever you need to get your ideas on paper. And once you do have a draft, it's really a good idea to get people outside your own lab to read it, or outside your own research field, to make sure that you're communicating effectively. Sometimes there's certain jargon or certain words we use in our particular labs that we don't realize other people don't necessarily understand. And sometimes you won't realize that unless someone else reads your statement and is like, oh, hey, could you clarify this? Or could you use different words to explain this part of your paragraph? It's also a good idea to have a skilled writer. So if you have an English writer, English major friend, or if there's a writing center at your institution, they're going to be better at giving you feedback on the paragraph structure or sentence structure, and if you're the prompt of the statement. And just a few more tips. Triple check for typos. You're going to be able to also reuse this statement for multiple schools. So save a different version for each school you apply to, so that you send them the correct version. Also, don't list everything on your resume. You'll also probably have to submit your resume so you can, you know, expand on all your other things that don't fit on this on your resume. But you really want to use a space to convey your personality. And still remember that these professors are probably reading 100 to 300 applications. So you want to make sure that you stay focused in what you address in your statement. Don't add unnecessary stories that are not directly related to your research experiences and why you want to pursue a PhD, because it'll start to look like you're just trying to fill up the space. And a lot of these statements have very restrictive word limits or page limits. So you really want to maximize the information that you're providing to the reader. A big question is how to address negative aspects that comes in personal statements. You really don't want to say, I may not have a lot of research experience, but, because that's kind of a red flag, right? Your research experience is one of the biggest factors in what people see as succeeding in graduate school. So if you don't have a lot of research experience, maybe did you take a research seminar or write a senior thesis where you really had to use similar skills of creating your own hypothesis, addressing a question, and finding the resources to answer that question. And decide whether an issue really needs to be explained. You know, a lot of us do really have one semester of disappointing grades. I definitely had a semester where I was taking like quantum chemistry and calculus 3 and physics 2 and working as a dishwasher and volunteering in lab and seeing a class, and it went terribly. That was a terrible semester. But I didn't want to take up the space in my statements to address that, because I had 2 years of research experience, and the research experience matters more to the admissions committee than it does just saying that you were honestly overworked that semester. If you do have a reason, like you had a health condition or you were dealing with a personal issue, and you have a letter that's a writer that one of your recommendation letter writers can address this, then that's perfectly fine to explain why that particular semester was difficult. And then your letter writer can support your statement in their recommendation letter, so the admissions committee understands better. And then just a couple slides on considerations before writing. So read other people's examples. We have a lot of example statements on the Científico Latino website on our writing center. So just browse them, see how other people wrote them. Then just take time to reflect again on your background, your research experiences, what you want to accomplish, and then how these research experiences and accomplishments show that you are a creative, persistent, resourceful person. How did you overcome the obstacles that you faced? And then while you're writing, to find faculty that you're interested in, you can email and talk to other faculty and grad students. Attend Abercams and SECNUS are both online. So those are wonderful conferences where a lot of graduate schools virtual booths will have virtual this year, so you can talk to the faculty. This is also varies a lot depending on the field you're in, whether it's common to do this or not. So ask mentors what the accepted format is. Okay, so maybe we can answer a few questions before Juan goes into the examples. Okay. So first question, if we were part of a long-term project that doesn't really have an end, would you suggest focusing on specific instances that were challenging? Yeah, that's a good question. There, a lot of times we are involved in, if you were undergrad and you were just part of a PhD's research project for a semester or two and you don't know how it ended, it's definitely, focus on what the challenging aspects were, but also how you overcame that challenge or what you would do in that situation to overcome that challenge. What suggestions do you have to address those problems? I think. Okay, how do you transition from about one PI to another? So again, providing that conclusion experience. So usually you write your research experience in chronological order. So you started talking about, I was investigating tissue engineering in this one lab at this school, and then you provide the conclusion, what happened. And now you're like, okay, now you want to talk about a new experience with a completely different PI. And then now that you've provided that conclusion from the previous experience, you can say, and now this informed my decision or caused me to search for a new experience or apply for the summer research program at this institution where I had the opportunity to work in this lab that does this other research, this different research. And they could very often, you might have research experiences in completely different fields. Maybe you started doing research in chemical biology, and then you decided, well, maybe proteins are cool, but actually I'm more interested in like the computational aspects of, can you create a really cool protein by computational modeling? And then you completely shifted fields. That's very common. So just being able to highlight the skills that you learned in each experience, the wet lab skills, but also the critical thinking skills. That experience, the fact that the first experience informed your decision to move on to a different experience is really powerful. Okay, what do you recommend if there's only one professor institution that studies a very specific topic of interest? Should we be a little more general about our interests? Good question. Yeah, sometimes you do want to play the school because there's one amazing professor. I would, and that's a very honest reason about why you're applying to the school. I would still look to see if there's other labs that you're interested in at that school, because oftentimes you don't know exactly what the mentorship is like in that lab. And ultimately, that's one of the biggest factors in joining a lab, whether you like the culture and want to fit in with those people there. So it's always good to be a little more open into what you might want to study. Then I guess we'll do 2 more questions. We can move on to. Okay. What is a typical limit for programs that don't have a page limit or only say 2 pages and don't say if it should be single space or double spaced? I think single space is usually what's acceptable, is okay. When I think most programs do have but it doesn't say it on Científico Latino. Most statements are about a page and a half single space. And if it doesn't say single space or double space, then maybe someone can correct me, but I'm pretty sure single space is okay.
Yeah, so typically with the page limit, that is going to be very program specific. I've seen, some range from 2,500 words, which is really, really, really long. And that was very rare case. And I remember a statement that I had to write from an application here at Yale that was double spaced as well. But typically you would find a lot of the requirements being 2 pages, single space. But again, be very careful with the requirements. So double check by going to the portal and looking at each program's requirements. They're going to be different from program to program. Mm-hmm. Okay, let's also answer. I see 2 questions in a chat box. So we can answer one more question from the chat box, and we have a question from Alexandra. They ask, would you recommend us including academic awards in our personal statement and accomplishments and things like that?
Good question. And yes, if it fits in. Oh, sorry. Yes, especially if it fits in with your research experience. So let's say you were in this research experience and then you applied to go to a conference and then you got a conference award. That's, yeah, definitely include that. I think Juan will also go over that a little bit, but yes, especially especially in context to what you were doing in the research lab, definitely, yeah. If you can find a way to put in your academic awards, that's, yeah, perfectly acceptable.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Great question. Yeah, so I see a lot of questions regarding more specifics into the particular sections of the personal statement. And so Juan and Cathy will be going in depth about some example personal statements, and we will be addressing your questions along the way. All right, so Juan. Thank you, Cathy.
All right, yep, thanks, Cathy. So in this next section, I will be going over a few specific examples of personal statements. And I think some of these will address some of the questions, as Daisy and Cathy mentioned, that have been posted on the Q&A section. So let's see. So I'll go over specifically into some sections that we talked about previously. The first one that I'm going to be referring to is the background and motivation section. So this is your introduction to your personal statement. And there are certain components that you want to make sure you include as Cathy mentioned previously, in your background and motivation. So I'm just going to do a quick refresher here. First, you want to start off with an introductory sentence that catches your reader. But specifically, you want to include an introduction to who you are, as well as your field of interest. And second, you want to include a how you got here section. And this should really be a short snippet of your research experiences. And finally, what do you plan on doing? So your goals and your contributions to science that you eventually want to achieve. And so in this first example, we'll just, oh, sorry, it's a little slow to react, so I keep double clicking. Let's see here. Trying to get back to the right one. Okay, so this is the first example here. Okay. There we go. All right, so this is the first example here, and I'll just give everyone a quick moment, about 30 seconds, to read it for yourself, and then we'll talk about it as soon as you're finished. Okay, not okay. So we've already highlighted a few specific sections of this introduction that I think are appropriate for discussion. So this first section is that I want to mention here is that this particular student who was applying for as a graduate student at Yale University, who was studying molecular cell biology, genetics, and developmental biology, started off their introduction with a quote by Francis Crick. And I personally don't always recommend this unless you can really put it into your own words and add some personal touch or uniqueness to it. But I think what it does do is it shows the reader that this person is interested in molecular biology and is familiar with one of the pioneers of molecular biological research. So I think it does show that, but I think it would still be best to put it into your own words if possible. And finally, they do end this example introduction by showing again or reiterating that they are interested in molecular biology, and they're showing interest in the program by specifically stating that this particular program is a stimulating academic research environment. However, I would try to also show why this program to you is indicative of a stimulating academic research environment, not just stating. So add some description to that as well would be ideal. But I think it does do the job of specifically stating their interest in the program and also introducing the reader to their interest in molecular biology. I'll give it a second just so I make sure I don't overshoot it, but I am clicking onto the next introduction. Yep, okay. So this is a second introduction that, again, I'll give everyone just a short time to go over it, and we'll get back to it in just a second. Again, we've highlighted key sections that we will be discussing. Okay, so in this second example here, we have another quote used in the introduction. Again, it's a way to use, it's a way to catch your reader and specifically show what you are interested in. So Dr. Kendall, I believe he was like memory research, I believe. Yeah, so it shows that that this individual is interested in neuroscience and memory research, and you can tell that they are by they applied to a neuroscience program at Yale University. But again, it shows their interest, it shows their passion, and they also add a little bit of context about some of the mechanisms that they plan on studying, including neurodevelopment. And furthermore, they emphasize their interest in this particular program by showing specific examples of individuals who have studied this process that this individual is interested in. So I think this is a good way to, one, introduce your reader into your background as well as your research interests. And it also convinces the reader that you have done your research and show that you are familiar with familiar with some of the research that's done in this field. And eventually what you want to do is shown in this section right here, where they want to use some of these findings to apply it to human health. So here they're laying out goals and expectations that they will want to meet while being part of this program. And again, they emphasize just how much or how they're interested in this particular research, field of research. Hopefully, oh, I did overshoot it, I knew it, okay. Okay, so this is the last example introduction that we're going to look at. So again, we've highlighted specific sections of this introduction that we will be looking at. Go ahead and take a few moments to go over it, and we'll start in just a second. Okay, so in this particular introduction, they again catch their reader using something that's specific, or catch the reader by one, showing their field of interest and something that's unique to this particular writer. So here they're introducing their field of interest, but immediately by talking about sensory perception and also discussing the broader discipline of neuroscience as a particular field that they are interested in. And this is something you can do, especially if you're not always sure, show something specific and also show a broader discipline. So this is a good way to not just limit yourself. If that is something that you are concerned about, you can always kind of do this strategy to to not necessarily limit to just one lab or one specific protein or something like that. And I think that this second section is really unique, or adds some unique traits to this writer, where they talk about having some training in or being a classically trained vocalist. And as a reader, you automatically want to know how this relates to this person's particular interest. And they further elaborate on this with this sentence where they show how they are interested in auditory stimuli and the emotional response. So I think that this is a really good way to introduce, one, your research interest, something unique about yourself, and also how the intersection of these two characteristics will make you a unique candidate for this particular program. And then this individual goes on and further starts elaborating on some of their research interests and some of the research that they've done. Here they specifically talk about how they're interested in researching the mechanisms underlying these processes and how those two characteristics intersect. And also they want to know a little bit about the neurobiological complexities of the brain. So I think this is a really good way to introduce, one, it's attention grabbing, and two, it shows that they have experience in this field. And it's not limiting to one specific topic. You're really opening up all of neuroscience here. So I think this also finally ends well with showing that this particular PhD program is something that will help them contribute to the field of sensory perception. So this, I think, collectively is a good way to introduce, one, your science, and two, your unique self, and your future contributions that you plan on pursuing. So next, we will talk about we will have some examples of research experiences. So in this particular section, things you want to include, or how you want to format your research experience, you really want to put them in chronological order so that it is kind of a storytelling process. You don't want to jump back and forth. This is a good opportunity for you to mention relevant awards and publications that you contributed during your research experience. This is also a good opportunity for you to show that you set goals in your research project and you were able to accomplish these goals. Try to be focused and concise. It's not writing a thesis, just writing short components of your research project. Also, this is a good moment to show any ideas that you came up with on your own. It demonstrates initiative and your ability to adapt to challenges. And finally, or the next, talking about results. So this is a good opportunity to show some of the techniques or skills that you have developed, and that could be applicable to some of your future research projects. So if you learned a unique technique during your training experience, this is a good opportunity to show it off. And finally, some conclusions. This is a good way for you to show that your critical thinking skills and how your findings tie back to your research project and your goal, and also how these findings will contribute to your development as a scientist in the future. Let's see. I'm trying to time it just right. So, so this is an example of a research experience, a good research experience here. So this did not time it. Okay, that should be correct. All right, so in this example of a research experience, what we're shown is one, where the research was performed here and which time point of this student's development. Here we show that this was a sophomore at Bernard College. During this time, this individual investigated or specific goals are stated, and the lab that this research was performed in. In the second section, we see some of these, some of the specific findings that were identified in performing this specific research. Here we are showing that they're talking about working with a mouse model. So showing that this individual has experience working with model organisms, and that they will have no problem picking that up in their future lab. I think that's something good to emphasize, especially if you're working with a unique model. I think this is a good opportunity to show that you have these kinds of experiences. And finally, here they talk about some of the results. And here, just as we mentioned earlier, this is a good opportunity for individuals to show that they are capable of interpreting the data and finally connecting it to some overall conclusion. Oh, and I just realized I didn't give everyone an opportunity to read it, but hopefully this still is making sense. We will on the next one. And finally, here, I think this sentence is actually important, where they're showing enthusiasm for their project and showing that how this could lead to some of the, how they're actually ending with an open-ended question. So here they're leaving the door open for other possibilities, further expanding on the research, showing that no project is ever complete, and they understand this. It's part of the scientific process. So I think this is a good way to end the research experience, showing what we know right now and showing what we still can know by investigating it further. And you just want to repeat this kind of strategy for all of your research experiences as you continue through writing them out. And again, this will make up a majority of your personal statement. So this is another example written by a graduate student at Yale University studying neuroscience. So again, I will give everyone a short moment to go ahead and look over it. And yeah, so. Oh, sorry about that. Okay, there it is. Sorry about that. Okay, so in this section, again, in this, sorry. It's very sensitive and it's very delayed. Trying to catch it just right. Okay, so in this section, or this individual starts off by, again, stating where they did their research, the duration of their research, and the lab that they were doing it. So, and they specifically state a model organism. And what the goal of the project is, or at least a brief introduction. So the complete goal is actually stated down here. So again, this is a good way to introduce your research experience, starting off by where you performed the research, what you worked on, and finally introducing the goals of the research project. Here, following that, this student actually gets more in depth into what they were studying, and this is a good place to do that, where you actually show some of the methodology, some of the models that you used, what treatment strategies you used. Here, some of the methodology again is included and highlighted, where they looked at pre and post-synaptic proteins tagged with a GFP marker. I mean, this shows that you're able to work with some of these models, and you're able to understand what the results mean. And you're just building your toolbox of your experimental toolbox to address more questions. Here they also show that they have experience with immunocytochemistry, just really listing some of the unique methodology that they acquired during this research experience, as well as correlating it to the specific research topic that they were studying. And finally here, as far as the research experience, they start to introduce their results. So in this section, they are talking about how not only the methodology, but what the results of that mean. And they're actually adding context to these results and showing that they're able to critically think about the data and their experimental design, and how this oh, sorry, I just got a message. I think we're able to turn on video. Let's see. Oh yeah, there we are. Okay, we got it to work. So now you can actually see our faces. Feels a little less awkward, I think, when I can see myself. So that works. Okay, thanks. So yeah, we'll go ahead and continue with this. So here we have, I think that was Daisy who figured it out. So thanks, Daisy. Appreciate that.
Thank you guys so much for bearing with us working out the Zoom virtual setting. So thank you.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll go ahead and keep going here. So here again, these are the results, talking about, let's see here, where was I? Oh yeah, so here talking about how these experiments, how the results from these experiments, or the data generated from these experiments connected to their overall interest and research interest. And finally, they again end by summarizing their overall experience and how this experience will further benefit their long-term strategy or their long-term goals in their career. Again, looking to do some impact on human health and research in neurobiology. Let's see, I don't want to overshoot it, so let's hope that this goes well. Okay, now finally, we're going to give a little bit of some examples of closing paragraphs. And I want to emphasize here that this is mostly going to talk about some of the program qualities that are going to be beneficial to you and your career, as well as stating your clear objectives, how you will achieve some of this by going through these programs. So things you want to include in your closing paragraph. I know Cathy talked about this a little bit earlier, but why this program is important. You want to also reiterate. Hoping I don't. Let's see. Sorry. Okay, so you want to reiterate some of the faculty you're interested in working with. You also want to state other scientific goals that this program will help you achieve. This includes some teaching experiences if you're interested, stating, especially if they have like a teaching program, that listing it here would be ideal. Leadership positions, if there's a student council that you are interested in, it would be ideal to include it here. Also, if there are groups and clubs on campus that you're interested in being a part of, again, this shows that you've done your research. You know that this program has the programs to help you achieve your goals and be successful in what you're trying to do. And finally, you want to end by stating your overall goal of obtaining your PhD. So with a clear and concise sentence, you really want to state why a PhD and why at this university. So again, just to summarize this quickly, including specifics about the program and why these specifics about this program will help you achieve your goals and contribute to your career development. I think I've gotten the hang of it now. Let's see. Hopefully I don't overshoot it. Okay, so here is an example of a closing statement. This one is a little bit longer, but so I'll give everyone a short time to go over it. But again, we've highlighted specific sections that I think that are important for this. And again, there are more examples on the Científico Latino website that you are free to use as well. My bad here. You know what, because this is clicking and I'm having a hard time catching it. I will simply just go over it, but yeah, I don't know why it's so delayed at times. Yeah, we'll just jump right into it. And again, we do have examples that you can use on our website or on the Científico Latino website. Okay, so we'll just go ahead and jump right into it just to make sure that it's not overshot or anything like that. So, oh, it is. Okay. I feel like I only click once, but there it is. Okay, so hopefully this time it'll either give us enough time to go over it or it'll stay. Okay, so here this individual starts by stating why this program. So they link specifically multidisciplinary collaborations, as well as the leading scientific scientists at that particular institution. And they specifically list individuals or professors that they want to work in. And not only do they list them, but they also quickly talk about why and how their interest in complex interactions in neuroscience could be addressed in their lab. And then they start getting into specifics about the program, including the curriculum, how they are able to intersect by their neuroscience interests with engineering and computer science, and also how they can actually use some of the model organisms uniquely available to these labs. And really focus on the research experiences that they listed in the beginning. So I think this is a good example of where their student ties back their conclusions to their introductory sentence. And here, this student actually goes on and lists specifics about their interests and how they want to engage on campus. Some organizations, as I mentioned earlier, where they want to focus on science communication, some of the groups that are only available on campus at this particular university, and also what they want to achieve from being a part of these groups as listed here. And again, finally, they state their overall goal, and really you're defining overall message with one sentence, which is shown here. I think this is a really good sentence where they basically summarize everything that we've talked about here and really includes components of all of these in this one sentence. And so again, I want to state that there are more examples on the Científico Latino website that you're free to look at if you need more examples. So now for this last part, we're going to go over some differences between some other essay materials that are often asked for in graduate school applications that can sometimes make this whole process a little bit confusing. And this includes personal statements, statements of purpose, and diversity statements. So we've really gone over, for the most part, what a personal statement is, but we'll briefly highlight some of the differences between these other essay types here shortly. So when looking at a personal statement and a statement of purpose, the way I like to think about it is that a personal statement is really looking back at your experience. So it's really the storytelling experience of how you, your own storytelling experience of how you navigated STEM and your own research experiences, how you went about that. And you're really reflecting on your own special motivations for applying to this program and obtaining a PhD, which doesn't have to be to find the cure for this disease or anything like that. It's your own special motivations for accomplishing this. They can be that, but it doesn't have to. And this is also a good opportunity to look back and reflect on possible flaws in your application. But I think it's important to show how you overcame these challenges and be descriptive. And the way I think about a statement of purpose is really looking forward. So you do look back and look at your accomplishments, such as your academic strengths and your research background. But what you want to do is package this in a way where you're showing that these particular experiences will help you be successful in this program for these reasons. So this includes project conclusions, technical skills, knowledge of your research field, and how you could impact your field. So they're both looking back in a way, but the statement of purpose, I like to think of it more as looking forward, in that you're taking all of these things and applying it to a specific contribution of your career goals. They're both, again, both kind of doing the same thing, but just different ways of thinking about them. And with a statement of purpose, you really want to highlight the way you fit with the program and how this program will help you with your career goals. And you want to do this with both, but just the way we think about it might be a little bit different. And I hope that's clear. If we have more questions, we can always go back and answer some of those.
Yeah, so Juan, we actually have many questions related to the personal statement and the statement of purpose. So we have a question related to the personal statement. And this person has asked, when it comes to a bad semester, if it was something personal, what is too much to add? What if it's not possible to get a letter writer to speak about that?
Yeah, so that is tough. So I mean, it is. So my suggestion or my advice would be to speak about as much as possible, but maintaining being comfortable with but make sure you stay comfortable with what you're disclosing. So yeah, so like it is a personal statement that you do want to specifically state some of the personal reasons, but I think by leaving something out, you could potentially show that a little bit of lack of transparency. So I think that's a very tough question, and it's important to be, but I think that's really your own. You're going to know what you feel comfortable disclosing, and you're going to know what you want people to know about you. But I do think that in some cases, disclosing some of those personal experiences may show a committee that you are able to manage some difficult situations. And if it's really showing that you overcame whatever this personal thing was, I think it can only help you by being a little bit transparent. But again, only disclose what you're comfortable with. They don't have to know everything about you. I hope that answers. That's a tough thing to really navigate, but I hope that answers the question.
100%. I totally agree with Juan.
Yeah.
And Cathy, feel free to chime in as well. But personally, I also had to juggle, work study and also working and balancing lab, right? As Cathy has also mentioned about her one of her rough semesters, and it's okay, right? So if you have a bad GPA during a semester, mention it like a phrase, right? Really shortly, don't dwell on it. So do, like Juan said, right? Be sort of navigate the space as demonstrating a level of transparency, but then immediately back it up like, oh, but because I'm hardworking and I'm resilient, I'm able to juggle so many things as you would as a PhD student, right? Juggling TAing, applying to fellowships, your research. And so the ability to balance and juggle so many things also goes to, reflect on one of the many strong qualities of you as a researcher and as a worker. So it's okay if you have a bad semester, again, don't dwell on it, but just mention it briefly.
Yes, definitely.
Okay, so we have another question on the personal statement. And Damaris, Cologne, so they ask, should I mention volunteer work, extracurricular activities, all those in the personal statement?
Yeah, so I think that this is if it's relevant, I think that's the key. That's the key there. In a personal statement, you're limited on time and space. And I think if it's relevant to your career goals and what you want to accomplish, I think it is appropriate and you should include it in there. But again, some volunteer work, I guess prioritizing each individual experience and showing which one is more likely to make a stronger case that this is the right program for you is important. So maybe listing them out, and perhaps tutoring might be better than, at least for a research program, might be better than volunteering at like a homeless shelter or something like that. So both equally important and could equally mean a lot to you, but for this particular application, one might be more relevant than the other. So I think prioritizing them in that way is important.
Great question. Okay,
I
so
can go on in
3 questions actually.
3 questions. Okay.
3 questions regarding like the introduction for the personal statement. And I believe a lot of examples we've also demonstrated contain a mixture of using quotes, right, as starters. And so, Jayla, so you've asked a bit ago, is it okay to start with a fact as an attention grabber?
All right. So I think it is good to start with a fact as an attention grabber, especially if it's very unique to you. It shows your own personality, right? It shows something unique about you. I think it's perfectly appropriate, and tying it into your research interest, if you can take it to that level, is even better.
Yeah, great question. And then Anna Christina, you've also asked, is it frowned upon to discuss about shows and documentaries as things that got you interested in a certain field?
All right. So no, I actually don't think so. I think this is something that if you can frame it in a way that shows your interest in science, I think that's great. I mean, probably most of you are too young to know this, but this movie, but the original Jurassic Park, they show how they cloned a dinosaur, right? Using like frog DNA and everything. I mean, that to me was amazing. And the fact that we're doing that now, right? Like that just shows that there are things in the media that have real life examples that are forward thinking, and maybe they seem like just some crazy idea now, but you know, in the future they could be real. So I think it's definitely appropriate, and you can definitely use that. I definitely use the Jurassic Park one.
I was going to ask you use one of that. Yeah,
of course. And I mean, I just recently rewatched that movie, and it still is so cool to me.
Oh my gosh.
The original Jurassic Park.
Yeah, yeah.
Graphics suck though.
Wow.
But, yeah.
I'm not really interested.
If I can also add.
Yeah, Cathy, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I really like the idea when you are able to like add a more personal touch to it. Also, if you ask a lot of professors why they're scientists, their answers are also usually because of a movie or TV show, especially because a lot of them grew up in the space age. So like space shows is a like very common reason why a lot of professors got into science. So they can definitely identify with it.
Yeah. That was a great question, by the way. And I think along those lines, someone also asked, is it recommendable to use non-science quotes that we find inspirational?
100%. Okay, I don't see that one. Oh yeah, there it is. Okay. Yeah, so again, using quotes is, it can be used, if used correctly, can be a strong way to show something unique to you, especially again, if it's personal to you. But I think you really have to frame it in a way that is really talking about yourself. You don't want to be overshadowed by the quote. You don't want to, if you can put it in your own words, I think, because this is your personal statement, it's not this person who wrote this quote's personal statement. So if you can frame it in a way that shows something about yourself and also shows your commitment to science or something like that, I think it's appropriate. But that's tough to do, and I've never been able to do that, but I've seen really good examples. So, but yeah, it doesn't have to be a science quote, and I think that's the main question there.
Okay, thank you for that. Thank you, Juan, for answering. And also Cathy. And so we're gonna address, I believe, 3 more questions on just the statement of purpose, because right after this, Juan will also be discussing about the diversity statement. So before we pursue, because I also see some questions about that. So before we move on, we also received a question a bit ago, and someone's asked, would it be okay to mention 2 PIs that you would like to work with, but their research topics are very different?
Let's see, where is that one? I'm trying to find it so that I can answer it on the key here. Was it dismissed already, or is that
the first one?
Oh, I see it. Okay, there it is. It's already highlighted. Okay. To answer your question, it is okay to put 2, at least my recommendation would be that it is okay to put 2 PIs, but as long as your personal statement stays consistent, I think that's appropriate. Like, you want to, when you write your personal statement, you really want to package yourself in a way that they're like, okay, this is you and this is what you want to do. So even if they're even if they're in different fields, I think it's fine. But and it could be a good thing, especially if, for example, like in the example that we had previously, the student was interested in neuroscience as well as computer science. So that was one example where you could be talking about 2 professors, but still the overall presentation was that they wanted to focus on a specific component of neuroscience. So it would be possible that they talked about a computer science professor that could maybe be tangentially related, or could be studying an algorithm that's related. But I think you definitely want to keep a consistent mind frame of what you want to study. at least for this, I mean, I want to emphasize that you can always change your mind once you get there. But when you're packaging yourself, I think a committee is usually impressed by someone who does have a little bit of a target on what they want to study. But again, you can always change. It's not like you're signing a contract and saying, this is what I'm going to study. So I hope that helps.
For sure. Okay, and I guess we'll go on to one more question before going on. We see we have a lot more questions, and we will be addressing them as well as appropriately throughout the presentation. So for listing the research experience in the statement of purpose, should I just focus on the research topics that's associated with the ones related to the field I'm going to apply to? So this also relates back to, I guess, the previous question as well.
So yeah, so for this, I think that it depends on your experience. So for me, like I had chemistry and biology background, but I wanted to stay in biology. So a lot of my research was actually in chemistry. So I had to frame it in a way that it showed that my primary interest was in biology, but I only had 2 research experiences to pick from. So I think that if you can draw something out of that research experience or research topic that's somehow related to it, I think that would be ideal.
Right, thank you, Juan. Diversity statement.
Okay, cool. All right, so yeah, so I think we finished with the statement of purpose. So finally, the diversity statement. Let's see if it moves. Hopefully I didn't overshoot it again. Okay, there it is. All right, so the diversity statement is sometimes also asked out of graduate school applications. And usually it's this general prompt where, how does your life and research experiences contribute to that diversity at the institution you're applying to? And these can get more specific, but that's really usually what it comes down to there. And so this can be framed into 2 different ways. The first is discussing your own personal past experiences that focused on diversity. So this can be overcoming obstacles due to ethnic, racial, socioeconomic, or cultural barriers. This could be part of leadership roles that you played that are specifically promoting diversity and inclusion at your university or your institution or community. And finally, the importance of having mentorship and diverse role models in your particular field. So all of these are really reflecting on your past experiences. And the second part that you could potentially work in is how you want to improve diversity at the institution that you're applying to. So those are 2 ways to tackle this particular statement. And it can be a mixture of both, more one or the other, depending on your own personal experience. And you could even start off this section by specifically stating goals, like starting an outreach club to improve cultural diversity or throughout the community, or even starting this mentorship program for undergrad and graduate students. So really talking about 1, your own personal experiences, and 2, how you want to improve diversity at your institution are ideal ways to go about this statement. Let's see. So I think that is it. As soon as it moves, maybe. Okay, it's trying to.
Here, do you want me to?
Yeah, I think that might be better. Yeah, there it is. Oh, yeah, go back, please. Yeah, perfect. Okay. I hope I didn't overshoot it. Yeah, it's working for mine, but it seems to overshoot it every time. But finally, I'm just going to summarize this this talk by going over what makes a good personal statement and what some faculty are looking for, or specific components of it that you should try to include. So first is traits that will indicate a strong and prepared graduate student, and that can be emphasized by your passion and dedication to science. So really when you're writing, showing enthusiasm in what you're writing and really being excited about being a part of this university, I think those are good ways to promote this passion for science. Persistence, so there is a lot of failure in science and it's a daily obstacle to overcome. So really show that this is something that you're used to and that it's not going to be something that puts you down. Showing your ability to focus and adapt. So writing a thesis or writing about difficulties with a particular experiment or developing a protocol, or showing creativity. So maybe you designed an essay, or any way you can show creativity, really, even in your writing style, that's a way to show creativity. So really showing that is in your personal statement is going to really stand out to the faculty that are reviewing your application, and things that you want to include in your overall application that will make you stand out. Your academic history, so be specific about some of the courses that you've taken. If they're really unique and cool and you want to include them, that will really set you apart. Also, just the quality of the personal statement. Did you have multiple people review it? Are there grammatical errors? Did you communicate what you needed to? And did you fully communicate your research experiences, what you did, how this is going to contribute to the future? And finally, you want to make sure that your letters of recommendation match your personal statement. So if this is key, because if your letters of recommendation match your personal statement, this indicates to a committee reviewing this that you really know what you want to do, who you are, and where you will be in a few years, and that you're really committed to science. So I think having that is important, and there are ways to help this process along. So oftentimes it is good to include your CV when you're asking for letters of recommendation, or if you're comfortable even having the recommenders review your personal statement, that can help keep those two in line. And so with that, I don't know if it'll move, but at this point, if there are any remaining questions that you would like us to answer, there's also some more resources available for all of you that are interested in, that we've included here. So at this point, I'd like to open it up for questions. So do you have any questions for me?
Yes.
That I should review?
Okay, so now we have several questions in the Q&A panel that I see. And so, yes, so we had actually a follow-up question. So what constitutes a bad semester that needs to be addressed in a personal statement? If it got a few C's, but they weren't concentrated over specifically, say, one semester, is that something worth addressing?
Let's see. Okay, there it is. So that's a very good question. So it could be that it's a particular topic, if that is the case. But you want, for explaining away some of it. So for example, maybe you're better at math versus other subjects. So you always excelled at math, but there's one subject like statistics or something like that you just had trouble with, then giving that kind of explanation might be appropriate. But a bad semester, I think, really does reflect on something happening in your personal life that didn't allow you to fully commit to your curriculum. So I think that's what constitutes it. But if you're just not necessarily good at a specific, or not good, if you're just better at other topics versus others, I think that's a little bit different. I don't know if that answers your question, but I hope it does. But I would say that a bad semester is typically tied to something external that was out of your control,
Mm-hmm.
and how you overcame that.
Okay. There's also another question related to the personal statement. And yeah, this is open to both the panelists, both speakers. So Alma asked, in the personal statement, would it be acceptable to discuss about challenges in the pathway of choosing to do a PhD, such as just being an underrepresented minority?
Yeah. Okay. I can go first, and then yeah. So, yeah, I think this is extremely appropriate. I mean, it is I think a personal statement. That's the kind of thing that it asks for, you know. So, what are your own personal motivations? I mean, to me, just by reading that statement, sounds like your own personal motivations are to improve some of this kind of a system that's specifically perhaps hurting some underrepresented students. So, I think that. Discussing this is appropriate and important to do so as well.
Yeah, I think I can start this. Oh, yeah, hello.
Hello, Cathy. There you are.
Yeah, this is like sort of like unwrapping a gift moment, you know. You gotta wait till the very end for the reward popping up. Yeah. So this is Cathy and Juan, solely into the presentation, but these are a lot of Zoom hiccups. I again want to reiterate, thank you guys so much for bearing with us navigating all these technical difficulties. But yeah, okay.
Yeah, no, I also wanted to add on to the kind of diversity question, because this is definitely something you can talk about in your introduction. So when you talk about like your sacrifices that you've made to commit to education, that's definitely a sacrifice. It's like overcoming the imposter syndrome, overcoming all these stereotypes about what you should be allowed to do. So you can definitely add that into your introduction, as well as in the end, your reason for pursuing a PhD. You know, one of my reasons was because you want to increase diversity in the professoriate. That's a perfectly also good way to address trying to overcome this obstacle and improving the situation for future generations.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Cathy. And I think there's actually a question right below that, and a very related question. When writing the diversity statement, can you include non-scientific volunteer experiences that you worked on to improve diversity in community? 100%. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that's exactly what they're looking for. I think it shows that you are driven to improve diversity by being involved in such experiences. So that's perfect. That's exactly what they're looking for.
Mm-hmm. Alrighty. Of course, Alma. Yes. Okay, so alrighty. So we actually have a question from the YouTube live stream section. So there's a really I think a really I think a question that a lot of people experience, but personally, even for me, I have not fully addressed it yet or asked it out loud. And so this person has asked, what if I had a bad research experience? Do I include that research experience in my personal statement? Will it hurt my chances if I do include that research experience, but do not ask that letter writer for a letter recommendation? That's a great question.
Yeah, that is a great question. I mean, I think that's one thing that you will have to learn as you continue to advance in your career. That navigating some of like the politics of science is something that is a skill that you will have to learn. And so, in writing, you definitely don't want to put anything negative in your personal statement that might hurt you. So, but you can definitely even bad experiences, there are things that you learned from those bad experiences. So it could have been a technique. So you can always draw something positive out of it, and you do want to include your research experiences, especially if they're limited. But again, I wouldn't recommend writing negative things about it. And that just goes back to navigating the politics of science, because it's there, right? There are some times where you will have to find the appropriate way of communicating and things like that. So you don't want to make enemies. I don't know, maybe you guys have something to add to that.
Yeah, no, I think the communication is the important part. So the language you use to talk about, if you really need to talk about that experience, experience. What language you use to.
I think it's cutting out a little bit. At least it is for me. Maybe is it for everyone else? Yeah. Okay. Maybe we can.
I'm gonna stop my video because it might be my internet. Yeah.
Totally understandable.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess we can move on to the next question. This person has asked also a bit ago, so she has asked, I'm going from a mathematical background and seeking a PhD in public health and epidemiology. I have a couple of short-term research experiences with inconclusive results, but they are not related to my topic of interest. Is there any way that I can focus on my job and what I have learned through it, since it is what instilled the topic of interest in me? And we also had some questions previously related to the short research experiences, but having inconclusive results. So yes, so Juan and Cathy, if you guys can chime in and answer.
Yeah. So again, if you're able to even summarize it, like if they were all related in some way, but perhaps you learned one particular method that you applied in all of them, or something, you definitely want to extract something that is applicable to your future goals if you can, and especially if you want to include it in your research experience. But yeah, I hope that answers that. You definitely want to be able to extract something that's moving you forward in your particular career.
For sure. Yeah, and also I would like to add that it is okay if you have inconclusive results.
Oh
You
yeah.
know, right? And so so many of my research experience, like for example, internships, right? Like it's not possible to finish a whole entire project in like a month and a half. It's just not. But emphasize the positive and not the negative, right? So for example, I pursued an internship at Merck Research Laboratories. And so the skills I developed was a lot of coding, right? And so, you know, these are the transferable skills that can actually apply, for example, in graduate school. So all these things, it's okay if they're inconclusive results, but, you know, focus on a positive. And so you've learned a skill, right? So developing a skill or enhancing and improving that skill, these are all of the things that, you know, the admissions committees are going to be looking for. So yeah, that's also a really big question. Yep.
Yeah, and I forgot to answer that part too. Yeah, but yeah, if I can just add one, like to the inconclusive results part, if you can also frame it in a way where you talk about why those results were inconclusive, perhaps that shows like your critical thinking skills as well, which are important for being a scientist. So why were those inconclusive? Was it because of the methodology, or relay some other information that the data didn't just come out, didn't match your hypothesis, so you're just going to throw it away? So as long as it doesn't show that, as long as it shows that they're inconclusive for these reasons, and I think that could also help you show that you're thinking like a scientist.
100%.
Yeah.
Alrighty. So I see there's two questions that are related, and so I'm just going to sort of combine them. So this person has asked, I personally have had many years of research experience, but I am aiming to change fields. How much detail should I give about my previous projects? And so there's also another related question that asks, when mentioning your research experience, is it bad when all these experiences are so different from one another?
Yeah, so I wouldn't say that it's bad when they're all different. I would say what may look bad is if, you know, you only spend a month here, spend a month there, and spend a month somewhere else. I think that might be where looked a little weird unless you have an explanation for it. But it could be that you were trying to find what you wanted to do, and you just had broad interest. But I would definitely try to focus on the ones that you spend the most time in. Where you actually worked on a project, helped develop it, if possible. If not possible, then then that's another case. But I would definitely try to, at least answering this first question, try to focus on the one that's the longest or most relatable, but listening them would be okay. And then the second question was, oh yeah. Okay, so the second question, I personally have many years of research experiences, but I'm aiming to change fields. How much details I should give about my previous project? So again, there's always something to take out of a research experience, and I want to reiterate this. You want to make it a complete kind of story that you're trying to send to your committee. And so if you can take something out of it, some skills, some transferable skills, as Daisy mentioned, that are relevant, I think that would be the best way to approach that issue or that specific situation. Because there's always something you learn out of any experience. So that's the way I would try to handle that, even when changing fields.
Yeah, I think also it's going to be important to be careful about the language you use, because let's say if you were, have research experience in chemistry, but now you're applying to immunology programs, the professors in immunology might not understand what the research you were doing in chemistry was because they don't have experience in that field. So you want to be a little more careful about the way you explain your research experiences and provide some context so that they follow along with what the project you were doing. But those, if those experiences were impactful to you, you don't want to not talk about them. Yeah, you want to showcase these experiences that you're proud of.
For sure. Thank you, Cathy and Juan. We have 2 more questions, and one of them is going to be from the YouTube live stream section. What if I took several gap years after college and I did not do research during those gap years due to familial responsibilities? How do I address that in my personal statement?
Yes, this is a really hard question. Okay. I have a couple of friends that, addressed this with the jobs that they were doing. So some of them were teachers. So they were teaching science, and that's totally applicable to wanting to continue and getting a PhD and increase the, scientific knowledge in the community. So also you can talk about what jobs you were doing, if you took any online courses that were related to research, and learning more about your field, I think is also a good way to address that.
Yeah, I think that's appropriate. And to add on to that, I would say that I guess giving your reason will be important there as to why you didn't pursue it for 2 years, but then emphasizing your enthusiasm before and after this event happened will also show that, if it wasn't for this, I'd still be continuing on this path. Now, if it was like trying to find what you wanted to do, then I think it would be important for you to show that that you worked at least a little bit right before committing to a graduate program in research again, if it was a situation where you're trying to find what you were trying to do. But that would be a specific case.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. I guess we will answer one more question. If you guys have any more additional questions, please feel free to email us at cientificolatino@gmail.com. And so there's one last question. So regarding recommendation letters, can they actually come from non-PIs? So, or people from, who are not part of the immediate scientific community?
So professors are, if I'm being honest, they're going to be a little biased, right? Professors only know how to be professors. So if this person that's a non-PI knows your work ethic, can speak to your creative skills, can speak to you overcoming obstacles, then you want to have them focus on those skills that are transferable essentially to what you also the skills you'll need to do a PhD. But non-PIs depends on the context, because if you were, the context and what job you're talking about as well.
Yeah, and I would like to add that for like non-PI letters of recommendation, maybe think about them as supplemental. So like you want to include your core PI recommenders, but like Cathy stated, if they really can talk about your future as a scientist, then it would definitely be good to include them.
Awesome. Okay, thank you guys so much. Thank you, Juan, Cathy, for shedding light, sharing your wisdom with all of us regarding the personal statement. And thank you to everyone who tuned in, both in the Zoom webinar and also on YouTube live stream. This will be recorded. And so if you guys want to go back to any of the slides that we've discussed, for example, the examples of the introduction, et cetera, of all the parts that Juan has covered, you will be able to do so once this is uploaded. So please subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can get the immediate notifications once it is up there and published. And so, thank you guys so much. We have an upcoming webinar once again, led by Juan next Tuesday on just an overview of the graduate school fellowship. So so I look forward to seeing you guys in future webinars. And once again, thank you guys so much, Juan and Cathy, for all of this. And so I'm so eternally grateful, and to everyone tuning in as well.
Thank you, Daisy. Thank you all for attending.
Thanks, everyone.